So many times in success, like people are like, oh, I work harder than my competition because I want it more. Yeah, sure, that's like a factor. But here's the reality. The reason why you probably work harder than your competition is because you've been working for much longer. You've got used to working for much longer. And you've kind of numbed yourself to the fact that you have to work a lot. And you've actually worked a lot before. So you're very used to this. And as a result, I've talked about this, but your baseline is so much higher than the other people for work. Your work threshold, your work tolerance, like the amount of work you can handle before you get burned out is probably so much more than what they can handle. And that's actually the true reason why you work harder than your competition. And if you flip that on its head, your competition could also be working harder than you because of those same things. So how do you improve that? You just keep pushing yourself every day. This is like a skill, like a piece of tolerance doesn't come overnight. If you're trying to adjust to spicy food, you can't just eat the spiciest thing and then the next day wake up and have some sort of tolerance. No, it's like a kind of a gradual thing. Same thing with this. You can't just dive into the deep end, go all in on like a 24-hour, like all-nighter work session. No, that's not how it works. That's not going to develop any tolerance. It's going to lead to burnout. It's going to lead to so many issues. You start off with maybe 1 hour, then you go 2 hours, then you go 3 hours, then you go 4 hours, then you go 5 hours, and then you try to see if you can go past 5 hours, then you go to 6 hours, and you just keep slowly raising the bar. And then after, a year of doing this, your new bar is going to be so high. And that's actually what's going to be carrying you to success. The reality is motivation sucks. It doesn't really exist most of the time. And unless you can use it to your advantage in the temporary, it's not going to help you long-term. What really is going to help you long-term is the systems you develop. So many times people talk about habits and they use this as a system. But the reality is the system is more like how much work and your work tolerance, because that is the thing that's going to carry you. If you think about it, if you keep raising your work tolerance and it's just at this level, and that's like your baseline, that's your norm, even if you just do your norm, you're going to be at this level versus maybe someone else's work tolerance is down here. And if they're at their baseline, they're going to be down here. So there's a fundamental gap in between you two. And this is you at top, and you're not even like considering pushing yourself really. This is what you consider normal. So in that case, you don't like rise, above that often. You may try to push yourself more, but a lot of times on those bad days, you may just do the norm. And it's because your norm is so high, you're falling to the level of your systems, right? It's like that saying, often don't rise to the level of expectations, you fall to the level of your systems. So your system in this case is your work tolerance. So if you build this up to be bulletproof over time, you're not going to have this emotional reaction to a lot of work. You may like burn out every once in a while, but you're going to be a lot better off than other people who don't have that work tolerance. And they're not going to be able to do the same volume of work that's required for success. What does success really require? It requires two things, speed and volume. And that's it. It's literally those two variables just again and again and again and again. Speed. You just got to work faster and faster and faster and be more efficient. It's not only like fast speed, but it's also like be efficient with your time. If you have like a couple extra hours, try to do some extra work. And then if you maybe can't do any for the rest of the day, that's like okay as well. But always try to squeeze out as much as possible so that each day you're doing a lot. And that's kind of what we consider speed. Then volume is, I like to think of it as like a very long-term thing. Like volume is like, okay, how many times are you going to do this per year, right? Or how often are you going to do this for the next 52 weeks or 30 weeks? Or that's like how many times you can physically do something. And if you think about anything related to success, whether it be in business, in school, in any aspect of your life, it's really just speed and volume. For me personally, I used to be a really, really skinny kid, and then I started going to the gym, and then now I have a pretty good physique, I would say. That came from like 4 years of like, going to the gym pretty constantly and then trying to learn like the different techniques and then, trying to learn how to eat right and all of that. Like those are things that take a lot of time to learn. And then after that point, it just becomes about speed and volume. How often you go to the gym and, like the speed aspect of just like how much do you go to the gym as well, right? Those are kind of like very similar. But in the world of trying to become successful, the speed and volume really matter a lot more because if you're just physically able to do more than somebody else, even if you fail 90% of the time, you will still actually outpace them eventually. And I love how like people hate the word failure. They just think it's terrible. I'm telling you, the biggest secret to success is that once you get used to the word failure, you get used to failing and you understand that is how you become successful. You don't become successful through success. You become successful through failure, repetitions of failure, tons and tons of failure, volume and volume of failure. Why? Because you learn so much through failure. So if you fail 90% of the time, you're starting to get so much experience from this 90% of the time failures, right? And then now you apply that, let's say, into the 10% that you're actually successful. And then you just max out the volume and the speed. You're going to be just like flying past somebody else who's going at, like 1/10 of that like speed, 1/10 of that volume. It's like if you do one task a day per hour, let's say, one task per hour, somebody else does 10 tasks per hour. If you look at just 1 week, the difference is already huge. If you look at a year, it's like astronomical. If you look at 5 years, you guys are not even like on the same planet. So do you see how like such a small change, and I've talked about this a lot, the work tolerance is so important, right? Such a small change compounds like crazy over time. And people are focused on these huge changes. Like just focus on yourself, focus on the output you can do, focus on maximizing that output, focus on pushing your potential up and what you're used to doing, your threshold and what you consider normal. Keep pushing it up and up and up. And then you'll get to a point where it's like you don't even feel like you're pushing yourself, but you just have gotten used to so much workload, so much volume that then when you do push yourself, you're going to like a level that most people could just never reach because they have not like put in the time to gradually raise their own bar. And that's really where you want to be, because then if you think about it, then it makes sense why people become successful. Because if you have a crazy work tolerance and you don't get emotional about things and you just focus on continuing to put in the work, right? Even if you burn out, let's say 10% of the time, most of the time you're just hyper efficient, hyper effective. You're just cranking out tons and tons of work. So even if you fail at so much of that work, you're going to learn a lot from that. And that's going to apply for like new situations. And you just see this compounding effect as like stuff all starts to take off. The work starts to show results. You have all these like experiences and knowledge from the failures you did. And you took that risk and you did it again and again and again. And through those repetitions, you eventually became kind of a master at it. And then you just start to see things like really, really start to take off. But the thing is like that weed out period of just failure after failure after failure is really like a weed out period. You know, like there's so many questions you have. You think like, oh, I'm doing this wrong, or et cetera, et cetera. I'm not good enough. This is not for me. I'm not like the successful people aren't just normal people. Right? That's all completely not true. In fact, I would actually beg to differ on a really, really controversial point that people often say. That people often think that the most intelligent people are the ones who become successful. That is actually not true. If anything, take it from me, right? The more intelligence you have, the more it actually hinders your success because you get used to doing a lot of thinking and you don't do any action. If we imagine the world as kind of like, you know, maybe an experiment or like a box or something where the only thing that matters is action. If you agree with me, the only thing that matters is action. It doesn't matter really what you think. It matters what you actually do. What do you act? What is the output result of what your thoughts are? And that what does that physically do, right? So it's like, how many calls did you make if you're cold calling? How many posts did you make if you're making content? How many times did you study? How many times did you just try? That's like all that matters. That's output, right? So like, if you think about that and you're stuck more just like thinking and thinking and thinking, and you don't actually do any action, it doesn't matter. It's better the guy who doesn't think about anything and he just tries just randomly. He just randomly, sporadically tries things and just keeps trying them again and again and again and again and keeps learning through that. That's why so many times you look at these like really, really like, you know, super intelligent people, and if they don't have the work ethic to back it up or they're not afraid to take those risks as well, they actually are pretty handicapped, I would say. So after saying that, you now realize you don't have an excuse. You can't say, I'm not smart enough. Really, you are just lacking one thing, and that's like probably a work ethic and some mindset stuff, right? But that is completely like solvable and learnable like on the internet now, right? So you literally have like no excuse pretty much, I would say. Just keep pushing, you know, your bar of what you can do each day, like up and up, and pretty soon you'll get there. And no, by pretty soon, I probably mean like 5 years, right? But like everybody wants everything now. And it's just really crazy to think about that because when your expectation is like so high, you know, you better put in crazy amounts of work to get there and also realize that it just may not happen. There's a lot of things you can't control. Like success maybe is a math problem that has like 100 variables, okay? We're trying to control like at least maybe 20 of them. And most of the time people control one of them, right? So 20 is already a huge increase. But this goes back to what I was saying about why you need volume. Nothing's gonna be perfect the first time. In fact, most things are not even perfect the 20th time or the 30th time. So the more volume you put out, the more you learn, the more also is just required in general for success. Because if you think about all these like different lessons you're supposed to learn, right? And you don't know those right now, how are you supposed to learn it? Like, yeah, if you have a mentor, maybe that would help. But even with a mentor, some things they tell you, you may not actually internalize it until you experience it yourself. So I think one of my biggest tips is you gotta like experience max your life. You gotta just be trying out so many different things because what you're gonna do is start learning about how these things are either connected and how they can teach you other things. You're gonna fail a lot. That's the most important thing. You're gonna fail so much, which is good because each failure is gonna open your mind to new possibilities. It's gonna teach you things that you realize you're doing something wrong. And then once you fix those things, and then you do that, like let's say for a realm of 10 different other things as well, and you have all this knowledge, that is actually what is the thing that catapults you to become successful. It's really the most difficult way, right, to actually make it. But it's the only way. You look at all the top successful people, they all have so much in common. They all start off doing their own thing. They fail for so many years. Nobody believes in them, right? And this is why you really have to focus on the input and the internal, not the external and the output, because the output is controlled by the world. And most of the world is not successful. So if you are trying to do something and the world is telling you you're doing it wrong, you're doing it wrong, you're doing it wrong, you can't do this, you can't do this, you need to make sure that people telling you that you're doing it wrong actually have some credibility to their name, okay? If they're an expert in some sort of field and that's what you're trying to do, yeah, that like makes sense. You need to adjust what you're doing. But if these people have not even taken the risk themselves and they're sitting on their couch, typing up responses to the content that you make, or, just like sending in their 2 cents even when you didn't ask for it, like you need to realize that those like comments are not even relevant. And that's why you got to focus on your own internal dialogue. If you have a good internal dialogue with yourself, when you're working, you're kind of trying to be your own cheerleader and pushing yourself on and really celebrating those small wins, because those are the most important things. If you don't celebrate the small wins, you're never going to get to the bigger wins. And that's just the reality, because if you don't celebrate those small wins, you're not going to keep going. You're just going to stop, because you're going to feel like, oh, you're going to keep comparing to those big people and you're like, I'm never going to make it. I'm never going to make it. Like there's this quote, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with 1 step. Imagine you just like think about the 1,000 miles the whole time you're walking. You're going to walk like 5 steps and you're just going to leave. You're like, I'm not doing this. But if you just focus on like, okay, 1 step at a time, and eventually you get to 5 steps, you're like, okay, I made 5 steps. That's good. 10 steps, 100 steps. Okay, 100 steps, we're making good progress. And you like focus on that kind of mindset, a whole shift in your perspective. And that's what you need to become successful, because it's going to be years and years of just nothing, Like for one example, I don't know if you guys know this person, but maybe I can pull up their Instagram. There's this guy, School of Hard Knocks, okay? So this guy literally is, doing pretty well with content right now. And you can see like his like account. He does a lot of the interviews with like successful people. So successful millionaires. Okay, so here's kind of his account. You can see he has like 6.7 million people, right? Or people following him, right? And you look at the number of posts he has, 3,187 posts. And you may be like, okay, that's just like after he got like successful, he just started posting more because he wanted more money, right? Sure. You can make up whatever excuse. I literally scrolled to the bottom to where the very first post he made. And you can see how he's been doing pretty much the same thing for 4 years. He's been trying to interview like relatively successful people. I mean, obviously now, because he's gotten very well-known people like, Shaquille O'Neal and stuff like that, like he's really blown up. But just think about that, 4 years. Are you going to stay with something for 4 years, even when you don't see results? Like really, really consider that. That is like the time frame that it actually takes. You have all these people who are trying to say, oh, you can make success happen in just like a snap of your fingers. It can happen so fast. I'm here to tell you guys, it's going to take much longer than you probably think. But that's okay, because as long as you're building yourself up, you're creating like a new life for yourself. You're creating a new reality, and you're just getting better and better. And that's really the only thing that matters at the end of the day. Because what's the alternative? If you don't get better and better, you're just going to get worse and worse. There is no staying the same. As the world progresses, you either get better or you get worse off, because if you stagnate, you're actually falling behind. So you have 2 options, and it's funny because people still think those are options, but in my eyes, those are not even an option. I can only take one, right? Like you have one option of working really, really hard, failing a ton, putting a lot of like risk on the line, putting kind of your image of how people see you, maybe being made fun of, like embarrassed, all this stuff. But eventually there's this chance that you can make it if you just stick with it long enough. And the other side is kind of like, it's very guaranteed. Okay, just don't take risks. Don't try to do anything special. Try to just do the bare minimum. And then you in return will get the bare minimum as well. And so it's like crazy to me that a lot of people will just pick that. But I don't even know if they think that's a choice yet. Because like a lot of people have not seen, I think with social media, more people are seeing that, but there is so much potential inside each and every one of you. There's so much more capability that just like we are not testing out and utilizing. And the only way to test out and utilize that is just like a muscle. If you're trying to build a muscle at the gym, you don't just like, pat it on the back and say, good job, just like try to grow a little bit. No, you take it there, you get some weights, you start lifting, right? And you kind of like tear some of that muscle, like, and that's how more muscle grows. So that's the same thing with our mindset. We got to push ourselves to our limit, right? We got to see what's that weight that we can almost like pick up all the way and not quite yet. And then just keep trying and trying until eventually, okay, we can pick up this weight that's more heavy, right? Or we can do this more piece of work that we didn't think we could do before. Or, we can achieve this extra thing in our day that we thought was going to be overwhelming for us. Those are the equivalents. And just over time, you're just going to keep building and building and building and building and building. And then you're going to reach a point when maybe you're 3 years in and you're still going, you're just so consistent and you're just like locked in, dialed in, everything, right? And then all of a sudden, everything's just going to change. Everything's going to blow up. Everything's just going to be like beyond your imagination. But just so few people make it. And so many more people would rather just watch and not actually participate themselves because it's scary. Because you're going to go through periods that are probably the most difficult of your entire life. You're going to go through periods where you feel like absolutely giving up is the only option. You're going to go through periods where you're questioning everything about yourself and like if you can even achieve this and if you're dumb to think that you can achieve it. You're going to have so much doubt that it's a miracle that you actually pull through. And that's the other thing too, that most people who start also give up because of these doubts. And that's why going back to what my different video, if you haven't seen it, go check it out, right? It's like being locked in your mind is a huge issue for this because if you care about what everybody else thinks, you're never going to take that first step, that first risk. And that's never going to lead you to kind of the success you need or the success you want at the end of the day. And if you don't even take that first risk, like if you need to fail, let's say 100 times and you're going to become successful. If you don't even fail that first time, how on earth do you think you can become successful? You can't. You have to be very like emotionally detached from failure. You have to look at it as a learning experience. And I know this is such a hard thing to do because you're like, Ryan, you're just full of BS, right? Like everybody wants to just like have a good time when they fail, right? That doesn't ever happen. It's true. Failure sucks. But what else are you going to do? It's already happened, right? If you already failed, you already made the mistakes. You already are supposedly like learning your lesson, right? And you need to move on. You can't just keep like looking at that failure because that failure is not that important. Besides what it can teach you, you have to then go and apply whatever you learn to the next task or the next thing you're trying out and then fail at that and then learn a new piece and then repeat that and repeat that, repeat that. So many huge startups, right? The founders, this isn't their first trial. It's like their fourth company. What does that mean? That means they failed humongously 4 other times before this. And then they had the insight that led them to like analyze and realize the thing that led to this, hugely successful company. Just like that in life, with whatever you're doing, it's going to take a lot of failure. And failure is super, super important. It is actually, I think, one of the most important things for success. So biggest takeaways, failure, speed, volume, and mindset. Those are going to things that are going to carry you to success. If you have any questions, drop them below and follow and subscribe for more.